Hi, everyone. I'm Cat Oriel with Forbes Breaking News, and today I'm here with Rep. Gabe Amo of Rhode Island. Congressman, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Kat. It's an honor to be on with you.
Oh, well, thank you. And so I wanted to just get to know you today. You're one of the freshest faces in Congress because you were elected during a special election late last year. And for those who might be unfamiliar with your background, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to pursue a career in public service?
Yes, most certainly. I have been in Congress since November 13th, after a special election, and I've been involved in public service, politics, and government, and all the like for pretty much the entirety of my career. I started working on campaigns when I was in high school, doing my first full-time job as an organizer, working for now Senator Sheldon Whitehouse on his first race for the U.S. Senate. And then I worked as a super volunteer on the first Obama campaign in '08, followed by working full time on his reelection, on President Obama's reelection in Chicago at headquarters in 2012, followed by a stint at the White House as a junior staffer in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs and Public Engagement. And then I went back home to Rhode Island, where I worked for now Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo when she had just been elected governor of Rhode Island. And just last year, up to last April, before I started my run for Congress, I was the Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for the president at the White House.
It's a very impressive resume, but I'm so curious, like where in your childhood or, when you were in school, what inspired you to take that first step in public service?
Well, for me, it always started from trying to do what's right. When I was really young, in kindergarten, I heard about Martin Luther King. It was the 25th anniversary of his assassination, and I wondered, why do all these people care about this man? And I saw in his message, when you learn the "I Have a Dream" speech, when you learn about racial equality, it's inspirational, even to a 5-year-old. And I saw very early that the sort of the unit of action for a lot of the challenges that we face in our country and the ability to act at scale is government. And so every opportunity I got, whether it was discussing the news with my dad, whether it's my first projects about presidents, right? I learned about how FDR in the New Deal inspired a whole transformation about how government played a role in people's lives. And from then, I knew I would be associated in some way with making people's lives better with government as the vehicle. And sometimes to get a good government, you need good politics. And that's how I started in campaigns.
And I'm also curious about your experience growing up in Rhode Island. Rhode Island, the smallest state in the country, and I don't think everyone is really familiar with its culture and what it's like there. So, can you tell me a little bit what it's like to live and grow up in Rhode Island, and also tied to that, the significance of your election? You are the first Black representative from Rhode Island, and I know Rhode Island is a predominantly white state. I think over like 70 to 80% white and only 5% Black. So, what are the challenges growing up in a state like that, then representing a state like that, and just the significance of your election?
Well, when I think about Rhode Island and my story, I think about how everybody in some way has a story where the generation before invests in the future to come. And what I mean by that is in my Rhode Island story, I'm the son of two West African immigrants. My dad from Ghana, my mom from Liberia, who came to Rhode Island in the '80s and met one another. And, that's how I came about, like any good Disney story. But in so many ways, that story is like many others. Some people are indigenous folks. We have a history of tribes being a really strong partner to the settlers. Roger Williams met the Native Americans, the Narragansett tribe, in peace. They were there before. But you also have people who came not of their own volition, enslaved people, where the slave trade was prominent. Two more recent waves of people coming to Rhode Island, your traditional Irish and Italian, to people from Portugal, people from the Azores, people from all parts of Latin America, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, and so much more. And so Rhode Island, while on its face may not seem very diverse. We have so many strong ethnic communities, and that's what I talked about both when I was running for this office and when I kicked off my time in Congress. On the House floor, I spoke to the different threads of the Rhode Island narrative being woven together, and that gives me the opportunity to serve a wide range of people. So, of course, being the first Black congressman from Rhode Island is not something that is lost on me. I know that so many people came before me. I stand upon so many shoulders. But that is not a hindrance. It actually presents great opportunity to bring people together, to know that I'm just a representative and a vessel for so many dreams of people who came from those with hard work, grit, resilience, and determination. And now I get to fulfill their hopes and dreams in Congress.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about how you've done that so far. I know you're just shy of your 100 days, but what have you done so far for your district? Do you have a district office yet? How have you been engaging with the local community leaders? And overall, what are your biggest goals for your district?
Well, I'm, very, very active, and I have relayed the message to so many across the district that we're open for business. So our district office is functioning. We've got a handful of amazing staff who are helping to ensure that when I'm in the district, that I'm going everywhere, seeing everyone, but that we're also dealing with problems, right? I ran on the premise that we deserve a government that is solutions oriented. So whether it's accessing a federal benefit for our seniors or our veterans, whether it's engaging with a passport issue, because we know those come up from time to time, whether it's the high privilege that I have of making sure that the best and brightest go to our military service academies like West Point, the Naval Academy, and much more. I have been so honored to be able to lead that work. And so that's one half of it. The other half of it is the work that we do in Washington, which is an extension of the district. I am merely a representative, but we have so many big issues in the world right now. I serve on the Committee on Foreign Affairs, on the subcommittees of Europe and Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. And in those roles, I spend a lot of time with foreign leaders, with leaders of parliaments, prime ministers from Europe as they deal and respond to Putin's aggression against Ukraine, and on the Committee of Science, Space, and Technology that I also serve on, where we are tackling the big emerging issues of AI, quantum computing, investing in our efforts to combat climate change via the major agencies entrusted with those responsibilities. I'm focused on making sure that we take those roles on both committees, and also my broader priorities of economic opportunity, economic security, and ensuring that all seniors get to thrive in this economy, in addition to those coming up the ladder, working hard against gun violence, which is a scourge in our country, and of course, defending freedoms to make reproductive decisions, freedoms to participate in this democracy without people being oppressed. So there's so much to do. But at the end of the day, it's about serving Rhode Islanders. What will make Rhode Islanders have the whole slate of opportunities that they deserve, that their children deserve, that their whole families deserve. And so I'm excited and honored to be doing this work.
Well, yeah, thank you for that answer. And you talk a little bit about how you're blending both your work in the district and the work in Washington together. I do want to dig into your work on the Foreign Affairs Committee, though, so far. So, very important committee to be sitting on, especially as a freshman rep. What have you learned so far? And it's a very important time to be coming on that committee as well, with everything that's happening between Israel and Gaza, and everything else in the Middle East. What do you wish more people were paying attention to, though?
Well, I wish more people were paying attention to how our differences amongst parties, while they're real, this committee actually behaves in a really bipartisan fashion. As you note, we have to do our part as a country to be unified in addressing terrorism in the Israel Hamas war, in returning hostages, but in providing humanitarian assistance that is consistent with our leadership in the world. And that's something that we have to work with Israel on. We have to work with regional allies on. We have to work with international bodies. But we are of course, got to put our values forward and make sure that on this committee, we continue to hold accountable all of those entrusted with the great responsibility of representing our interests abroad. Additionally, when I look at the work on this committee, we also have a slate of emerging threats. When we see the rise of China, when we see what Russia is pursuing, that we need to be strategically focused, not just on one part of the world, but on many. And our opportunities to address the challenges are driven by both the economic imperatives that we have, but also by the work that we need to do to make our allies stronger.
Speaking of that, I'm very curious. You mentioned that this committee is bipartisan, but when we look at the Republican majority as a whole, how has it been serving in Congress as a Democrat and, having the Republicans controlling the House? I guess you had a little bit more of a head, or, you were able to kind of take a look from the outside and coming in with a bit more understanding of everything that they're doing than your other lawmakers who started at the beginning of the term. But what did you expect has been different than what you expected coming in?
Well, look, I wish we were a more productive Congress. You have heard it out of Republicans themselves that they have not, when they have held the majority, done anything for the American people. Now, just a year ago, when I was working in the White House on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue, I was experiencing the benefits of a productive Congress with a Democratic president and a Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate that did historic work to pass the rescue plan to dig us out of COVID and put our economy back on track, to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law, and to rebuild our country from broadband, sewer, roads, and bridges to technologies of the future, and of course, the Inflation Reduction Act that is going to not only control the rising costs of healthcare, but also deal with the emerging and the ever-present threat, really, of climate change and so much more. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the CHIPS and Science Act. So that was a really productive Congress. So I have hope that when we have a Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, we will get back to solving some of our most intractable problems, finding real solutions on housing, making sure that we fortify a woman's right to choose, doing things to strengthen our democracy and protect the right to vote, and of course, lower costs for the American people in every way that's possible. So while I'm a bit disappointed at the context in which we live, that's temporary, because if we do the hard work, we will be able to return to the level of productivity that the American people deserve.
Hmm. Well, I know that we're not speaking in a campaign context now, but I'm just curious, what do you think it's going to take for the Democrats to take back the House?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think it has to do with the work. It's about the articulation of our values and being very clear with the American people what we want to accomplish. We want to make sure that we have economic opportunity for people. We want to make sure that housing and home ownership is not out of reach. We certainly want to protect people from gun violence, right? It should be a bipartisan matter that the leading cause of death for children should not be a gunshot wound. There are so many real things that we have to do. So we have to make clear choices. We have to make clear that we can maintain the status quo of dysfunction, or we can get back to what we just had in the 117th Congress from 2021 to 2023, one that was strengthened by the will of the American people to make government work. And that's what we can do. And I hope to be a big part of that.
Well, thank you so much. My final question for you. I know you were just shy of your first 100 days, but I do want to ask, what is your end goal? Like I said at the beginning, very impressive resume. You're so young as well. What is your long-term plan? Do you plan on continuing a career in Congress indefinitely, or can you speak to that a little bit, or we'll just have to wait and see?
Well, look, it's a little bit of wait and see, but I have one promise here is that every single day I will work for Rhode Islanders really hard. And that for me has been without elected office when I worked for governor, when I worked at the White House, and now they've given me the privilege of representing them in Congress. So every single day, if they keep sending me, I'll keep showing up. And I've only been here just shy of 100 days. So I hope I get a few hundred days more at minimum.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today, Congressman.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for having me.